Sweet potato bread. That's what we're making today, and look at these beautiful loaves. First, you're going to want to take a sweet potato, cut out the eyes, make sure it's washed, and then cut it into slices. This will make it easier for boiling and softening it. Now, take a pot, get some water going, and we're just going to put those in the hot water and bring it to a boil. And this will last 30 minutes. Make sure you check it with a fork, because you need them soft. Otherwise, this whole thing was pointless. Now, drain the water and put these in a mixing bowl. And then using a fork, you can take the skin and actually peel it off. And you want to do this while it's hot. As you can see, I am burning myself. But I have asbestos fingers, so it's okay. And that's a joke. Now, just peel them all off, and it's super easy. A lot easier than using a peeler on the cold, hard vegetable that it is. Once you've done that, you can either use a potato masher, like I have here, or you can also use the fork you were using. I use the potato masher just because it's quicker and I have the tool available for it. And you want it to be like a puree, like just a really good mash. Now here I've got all-purpose flour on the right and bread flour on the left. And we're gonna make 2 loaves with it. So here we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then I am adding 1.5 teaspoons of dry active yeast, or half a packet per loaf. And then I also added 1 teaspoon of salt, and now we're whisking them all together. Now, here I have 3/4 cup of lukewarm water, and I'm adding 1 tablespoon of sour cream, and I'm whisking that together. And remember, this is measurements for 1 loaf. And right now I'm making 2, because we want to see the difference between bread flour and all-purpose flour. Then add those to your flour mixtures, as well as 1/3 cup of the sweet potato puree. You can also use any potato. You don't have to use sweet potato. But I have a lot of sweet potatoes, and I need to use them up. Make sure you give it a really good mix, and it should look pretty broken up like that and not like stuck together, almost like a buckwheat flour. And then you're going to take 2 tablespoons of softened butter and add that. And once you have it in there, you're going to want to mix that together. And then I decided, you know what? I'm just going to use my hands. It's a lot easier. And you're going to get it together into a nice dough. And if it feels too dry, go ahead and add a little bit of water, which is what I did here. And if it feels too wet, you can always add a little bit of flour. Just make sure you do a little bit at a time. Now, from this point on, we're going to go ahead and take this to our work surface. So, spread out a little bit of flour. And then put a little bit on top of your dough. And now we're going to knead it. This process is going to be about 5 minutes, so hopefully you have time. Put on some nice lo-fi music. And you're kneading this for 5 minutes until it's not sticky anymore. Form it into a ball, and then in that mixing bowl that it was in, take a little bit of butter and grease the bottom of it. That way it doesn't stick. And you're going to place that in there. Let's do the same to the other. And this one's with the bread flour. Remember, 5 minutes of kneading so it's not sticky anymore. Form it into a ball and put it back into its greased mixing bowl. Ah, yes. It's going to love it in there. Next, we're going to take these, just cover them up. And I have these handy dandy lids. And we're going to let them rise for 1 hour. Now, as you can see, they've doubled in size. And that's exactly what we want. Now, depending on the temperature of the room you're in, they could triple in size. You're going to take your bread pans and grease them up. And I'm just using butter. Because what we're going to do now is we are going to take our dough. I'm going to knead it just a little bit, do some letter folds. And what I'm doing is just kind of working the dough a little bit and forming it into the shape of that bread pan so it can fit. And this took about 5 minutes. And then we're just gonna let that baby sit in there. All right, let's grab the bread flour one. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna knead it a little bit. We're gonna do some letter folds. And then we're gonna roll it into the shape of the bread pan. Beautiful. Now, let's tuck these babies in, our cute little dough babies. I'm using a clean kitchen cloth, and we're gonna let these rest for another hour to rise. And again, they've doubled in size. This is perfect. Now, in a preheated 350 degree Fahrenheit oven, we're gonna pop these in for 30 minutes. And look what comes out. Ooh, these are beautiful, but they're still hot, so let's let them cool. And 15 minutes later, we can go ahead and take this bread loaves out and put them on a cooling rack. And they just slide right out. Look at that color. The crispiness on the outside is a lot like a French baguette. It is absolutely wonderful. But we want to see what the inside is like as well. But this color, it's perfect. So let's get our cutting board and our bread knife. And let's test the bread flour one first. Ooh, look at that. Those air pockets, and look how spongy it is. Now let's test the crumb. And it's nice and chewy. Now for the all-purpose flour one, we're gonna do the same thing. Let's test its sponginess. And it pops right back. Beautiful. And it has the same dense crumb. And I tell ya, they both taste amazing. So which is better, bread flour or all-purpose flour? Neither. They're both good. And I highly encourage you make them both. Enjoy!